Welcome to the Private Corporate Counsel Podcast, or as we like to call it, the PCC Podcast. My name is Tee Persad, and I'm your host for the day. Today, we are fortunate enough to have Ray Watson as our guest today. Ray Watson has a very interesting past. Not only did he have a substantial amount of his lifetime dedicated to owning and operating businesses, but he spent a substantial amount of time actually helping entrepreneurs grow and develop their business, particularly working with CEOs. Ray, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Now, I appreciate you coming in. I know you and I have known each other for a little while. I think we dabble in the same space to some extent, but on different tracks. Whereas you work primarily with CEOs and help them help each other in a roundtable format through the CEO Nexus and other organizations that you work in. I deal with them on an individual basis, and I work with them on individual issues that pop up from time to time. So the collective approach and the individual approach, I think, are necessary for CEOs to be successful. But you know, you just don't wake up one day and have all the skills to be able to lead a CEO roundtable and to help CEOs grow and develop in a constructive way. Tell us a little bit about your background. You have a pretty interesting background. I think everyone will find not only interesting but inspiring. Tell us a little bit about your early years.
Well, I've been on the planet a while, so I got a lot. I'll compress it into a short cliff notes here. But I grew up in Melbourne, right over here on the coast. Went through high school, community college, graduated from Florida State University. Degree in business. When I graduated, the Vietnam War was hot and heavy, and so I was going to get drafted, and I went ahead and joined so that I could get commissioned.
Yes.
So I went through officer candidate school at Fort Benning and then spent 8 years in the military. So when I got out in around 1975, I went to work in Houston, Texas for Sperry Univac, which was a computer company. They've since been acquired. Well before PCs, but it was more of the mainframe type of computers and just evolving.
Those giant machines.
Right, the big rooms, the big
screens.
air conditioning,
Yes.
and all this sort of thing. So definitely a different time than we got, the power we have on our phones today. Yeah. I started there as a salesman. Ended up being promoted to a sales manager, a branch manager. Then I was recruited by another company where I took over. Again, I moved to Dallas, Texas. And took over another couple companies before I purchased a company in Denver, Colorado. It was a software development and hardware distribution company. We developed software for specific industries.
Yes.
So I moved my family to Denver, enjoyed Denver greatly, skied all the time, kids had a great time.
From water skiing to snow skiing.
Snow ski. And so I built that company up, and then the company that manufactured the hardware was called Contel, was a big telecommunication company then, purchased my company, and I stayed on with the company about a year in a transition mode. Then I was recruited by a publicly held company here in Orlando, and I had the opportunity to come back, and it was Intercom Computer Centers, and I came back and became president of that company. We became the largest reseller of IBM, Apple, and Combat computers in the state of Florida at 13 locations, close to $100 million in revenue.
Fantastic.
We merged that company, and I then did some consulting work for a fertilizer company. I started with another guy, a home medical equipment company. We sold that company. And then started with a friend I had from my actually Little League days in Melbourne, and we built golf courses. We built golf courses throughout the state of Florida, all the way up to the Northeast and as far as west as Texas. We did that for 10 years and worked with several named architects, with Arnold Palmer and others that you certainly ring a bell. But then the recession hit in 06, 07.
Yes, and everyone was impacted.
Nobody was building golf courses anymore.
Not at all.
So we had already, the golf course portion of the business was the first one that kind of saw a slowdown. Back then, if you're building a subdivision, you build a golf course, sell lots on the golf course. But since we had all the equipment, again, we're a pretty large company, a couple hundred employees, a lot of heavy equipment, that we're doing development work for home builders and residential sites.
You were doing mostly the horizontal work.
You're doing the horizontal work, the roads, the sewer,
exactly.
the water, et cetera. And we did that for a while until then it really hit, is when the whole thing just fell apart.
Around 2007, 2008.
That's correct. Yeah. And the people that we were doing business with, the home builders, they were out.
Yes.
And so I spent a year winding the company down and collecting money.
Which is a challenge that most businesses never even think that they're going to be doing, but an important skill to have.
Yeah, it was. I learned a lot in that because we were the general contractor for the horizontal work. At this point, we were not working under a general contractor. We were the general contractor. So we had the notices to owner.
Yes.
And the banks wanted us off that notice to owner.
Of course,
did a lot of negotiation with banks to get paid. Certainly took a haircut here and there to get the money because things were just so horrible then. Was able to successfully wind that company down. Then I said, what am I going to do? I really didn't want to do another company, but while I was president of Intercomp, I had been in a CEO roundtable group here in Orlando called the Executive Committee, or TEC back then. It's now called Vistage. And I had such a great experience with that. We were surrounded by some really smart people, and certainly allowed me to grow that computer company significantly. I never made a major decision without asking my informal board of directors,
of course,
as to what do you think about this? So then I said, I kind of like that. And so I got back with TEC and started some groups here. Then I was asked by the University of Central Florida about 10 or 11 years ago, because they started expanding into second stage companies with kind of outgrew the incubator, because they have a great incubator program there. But they had companies that were growing, had employees, had revenue, but didn't have any place to go.
So there's a gap in the market for that group. Right.
We define second stage as 10 or more employees, $1 million or more in revenue.
Yes.
So I then started with what was called GrowFL at the time through the University of Central Florida.
Which still exists, right?
It still exists. A little different format. And then CEO Nexus, which was a small roundtable facilitation organization that had formed this relationship with GrowFL. And I was contacted by them because they had received funding. GrowFL received funding from the state of Florida to expand the program throughout the state of Florida. And so they had more CEOs that were interested than they had people to facilitate these groups. And so I moved from the Vistage organization to work with the UCF GrowFL organization. Again, that was 10 or 11 years ago. And
of course, we know UCF is such a great breathing ground for innovation and entrepreneurship and technology and new companies. So it was a great fit.
Absolutely. And then since then, we formed relationships with Rollins College for their Center for Entrepreneurship, and just recently formed a relationship with Florida Tech over in Brevard County.
Oh, fantastic.
So we're trying to bring that academic community in line with the business community for the benefit of both.
Yes.
So at this point, I facilitate 5 groups throughout Central Florida. I have the opportunity to deal with about 50 CEOs on a monthly basis, so get a pretty good perspective in terms of what's happening. And the biggest thing is they're able to help each other.
Yes.
And as T said earlier, they get one-to-one support with T's organization and with their CPAs and other advisors. But this is an opportunity for them to come together confidentially and share their concerns, ideas, opportunities, and get input from others.
Of course, it's lonely at the top. And if you're sitting in your office just running your company and you're not in an environment where you can relate to other people who are doing the same thing you're doing, it's easy to get lost.
Absolutely.
At least it's easy to be lonely. It's easy to get frustrated. It's easy not to be able to relate to people and have them relate to you in a way that actually makes a meaningful difference. And the service that you provide leading these CEO roundtables actually it helps entrepreneurs in a way that I don't think any other type of scenario will help them.
No, I agree. And I mean, to your point, it is lonely at the top, and there's things that go on. I can reflect back when challenges, when I talked about the downturn in the construction market. I mean, I wasn't even going to talk to my wife about this. I didn't want to spook her.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's just things that come up as you're running a company that maybe you'd have no one to talk to.
Yes.
Because you're not going to, even your leadership team, there's things that are going on that you don't feel comfortable putting on the table yet. So you got this confidential forum of other people that are not competing with you.
Yes.
And it can give you some, open, unfettered advice.
Yes.
And sometimes it's stuff you don't want to hear.
And sometimes you need to hear it because the stuff you don't want to hear. I want to jump back a little bit, Ray, because your background is fascinating, not only to me, but I'm sure to everyone that you meet. Here you are, you grew up in sunny Melbourne on the beach. And I'm thinking about the skills that you developed while you were there in that environment. That must have played a substantial role in you developing your emotional intelligence, raising your self-awareness, the way you actually regulate your own behavior, your social awareness, and how you regulate your relationship and manage your relationship with other people, and how both of those things intersect. And obviously, as you've alluded to before, that's an important skill for entrepreneurs to have. But then you take that experience and you transform that experience into a college experience, and you take that college experience and then transition into the military. So you have the academic, you have the social experience, you have the academic experience, and then you have the military leadership experience before you actually get into business. Those three experiences and those three different types of open classrooms, if you will, how did those three experiences impact how you viewed the business sector when you transitioned from the military?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I think when you're going through the early phases, you really don't think about it. Mm-hmm. I had the opportunity, again, to grow up in Melbourne at the height or at the incipient phases of the space program. And my father was one of the 50th employee at the Cape.
Fantastic.
And he ended up being head of motion picture and photography at the Cape. So I had the opportunity as a high school student to meet all 7 of the original astronauts.
No kidding.
Yes.
Which one's your favorite?
Well, Gordon Cooper, because Gordon Cooper actually went up hunting with us. We had a cabin up in the Ocala National Forest, and my father and I would go up and hunt during deer season. Yeah. And Gordon Cooper came up with us. So I was a senior in high school or junior in high school, something like that.
That's a little bit of history I didn't expect to learn today.
Yeah. And went to an after party with John Glenn after his orbital flight. So, being around that kind of environment and that growth, that technology that was Brevard County then, was certainly formative. College, in fact, a quick story. I mean, you kind of turns in life. I had graduated from the Brevard Junior College, which is now, I guess, Eastern State College.
Yes.
And went to work for Florida Power and Light Company as an engineering estimator. And I was pretty happy doing that. Young guy, had a little money in my pocket, certainly building some relationships and some experience. But then a friend of mine called me and said, hey, we're taking off for the Bahamas. He had a 30-foot catch sailboat. And he called me and he said, we got room for one more, Ray. You want to go?
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah. So this was the summer of 65.
Yeah.
And so I sold my car, quit my job, got on a sailboat.
Wow.
And away we went.
Yes.
So I spent 4 months in the Bahamas on a sailboat, called my mother on a ship-to-shore radio and said, you got a draft notice. But if you get back in college, then we'll give you a student deferment. So I came back from the Bahamas, got back on a Friday. We sailed back, got back on a Friday. Father took me to Florida State on that Sunday, and I started college on Monday.
Wow.
And
the process is a little different now.
Yeah, a little bit different now. But having been drafted, I knew I was hot for the draft again upon my graduation.
Yeah.
So when I graduated is when I went, they had a program that if you would graduate from college, you could join with a guarantee to go to officer candidate school and be commissioned. Because I didn't do didn't go through ROTC.
Well, you know, I was an enlisted guy in the Army. You were an officer. Two different worlds. Two completely different worlds. And interesting, I was in ROTC in high school. That's the only class in high school I failed. Because I didn't want to wear the uniform in high school because of the teasing and the stigma and the differentiation between regular students who wore regular uniform and the ROTC guys who wore the ROTC uniform. And it's so ironic that I ended up going into the Army right after high school. But one of the things that I noticed right away was the way that the enlisted men and women were functioning and treated versus the officers. And for me, that was the thing that triggered me to actually go to college. And so if I didn't go to the military, I probably would have never gone to college. But anyway,
that's interesting. Yeah. Well, since I had a degree in business, I was told that I could probably get in the finance corps.
Yeah.
And so that's where I thought I would go, but I ended up at infantry OCS.
Oh, geez.
And quickly learned that they didn't need finance officers in Vietnam.
No, they don't.
They needed infantry platoon leaders. So, but I was fortunate to get accepted into Special Forces training.
Yeah.
And I think that was the most formative training I had, because you talk about enlisted and officers. Well, on a Special Forces A detachment team, which I commanded, there was no rank.
Yes.
Yeah, I was the commanding officer, and I had a senior sergeant that was the team sergeant. But you were together to accomplish a mission.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like necessarily the regular Army. But if I look back on all my experiences, that experience of leadership and commitment and the type of people that I was able to deal with that were totally committed to a cause was probably one of the more formative things that I've tried to practice throughout my life. One of the things I learned as an officer was that you are 100% responsible for everything your company does or fails to do.
Bar none.
And it's buck stops there.
Yeah.
And you have to make decisions. You have two decisions to make, or two major responsibilities as an officer or a senior enlisted person to accomplish the mission, welfare of the troops. Mm-hmm. If you've got to make a decision between the two, you have to accomplish the mission. And I think that's one of the things I brought over into business is saying, yeah, you build relationships with people in your business. You try to run your company like the family. It's a family environment. Yeah. But sometimes you're going to make hard decisions. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those hard decisions affect people.
Oh, oftentimes they do.
Most times they do.
Often, yeah.
But you have to be able to make those hard decisions for the good of the organization.
Even if that subordinates your interest.
Say again?
Even if it subordinates your interest.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like Simon Sinek says, true leaders eat last.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but I think, as a CEO of a company, where I see people where they may falter a bit is unable to make those hard decisions, and they procrastinate. Once you procrastinate on a decision, the people around you are looking at you as a leader to make those decisions, and your leadership could diminish some in the eyes of your people.
Yes. Because
they know the decisions that need to be made, and if they're not made, you're not being the leader to make them.
They lose confidence, they lose trust.
Absolutely.
And when you lose trust with your people, you might as well move on.
Yeah, trust is the foundation, and once you lose it, it's everything else
crumbles.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've got these three experiences: the growing up in Melbourne, the college experiences, the military experiences, which are three different classrooms, if you will. And then you have this opportunity to work in the business sector. Two things. One, how were you perceived by the people who didn't have that experience, and what did you use from those three experiences, or those three classrooms, if you will, that actually helped you accelerate in your entrepreneurship or your work out of the military, your business life cycle?
Well, I think number one, you have to realize you have to be humble. And I remember when I first got out of the military, went to work in the computer business, I went through a training class. And my peers in the training class were guys and girls that had just graduated from college or were recently out of college. And I'd already been out of college for 8 or 9 years, and obviously had a different experience than them. But I found that I needed to be quiet. In other words, I needed to be humble and learn and be able to draw on those experiences, but don't tout them.
Yes.
So I think that, and then it's kind of evolved. And one of the things I really learned was that you really have to listen and understand what the other people are doing and what their responsibilities are. And don't, the management tier back then was pretty much hierarchical, my way or the highway.
That's right.
And I think it was because of the teamwork I did in the military. I said, no, you can't do that. We have to be a team. We have to work together.
Yeah. And
to be able to look at people for their values, what they can do, try to put them in the right position, and delegate responsibility and authority to people to do things.
Yeah, I mean, this listening concept, it's so simple to explain to people, but it's so difficult to practice. And so how did you not only exercise that skill as you were beginning your career in the business sector, but also teach other people that skill? Because it's really not an easy skill to teach.
I'm not sure I really taught that skill when I was running a business. I tried to do it just by the way I operated. Hopefully others would operate, but you learn along the way. Yes. And obviously, since I have an opportunity to work with other CEOs, I push that a lot. The old thing, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Ask questions and listen.
Yes.
Because you don't know it all. And you've got to be able to, again, be humble at times. If you don't know something, you don't know it. Ask a question. Yeah. Ask for help.
Yeah.
So many people are afraid to ask for help because they feel,
2 most important words in the English language in certain contexts: I need.
Right. I need. Can you help me?
Can you help me? Yes, indeed. That's definitely the case. So as Stephen Covey calls it, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Right.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with at the early stages, they are in the sales mode almost all the time. And when they're selling to someone, they want to be heard more so than they want to understand what the customer wants. So they're listening to react instead of to understand. And of course, they don't make the sale. I just had a conversation with someone who was a potential client, and I spent about 30 minutes on the phone with her. And I may have, of that 30 minutes, maybe about 5 minutes of that conversation was with me speaking. The rest was just listening, taking notes, and reflecting back some of those things so I can clarify and verify what she was saying. And at the end of the conversation, she said, "Send me the agreement." And so this listening skill, or tool, if you will, is so vital. Either some people say either you have it or you don't, but the fact of the matter is you can develop it.
Oh, I think you can develop it. There's a great book out there with Start With Why with Simon Sinek, which I'm sure you've read.
Yes.
But he talks about how it actually affects decision making on a basic level of how your brain operates. Mm-hmm. And so to your point of going in, and again, I learned as selling computers, your first idea is to go in and just tell them all about the computer, all about the feeds and speeds, as they say. When all you're doing is telling them what, you're not finding out why. What's the value of this?
Yes.
So I think the ability to ask the questions and find out the why, listen, then you can respond to affect the why. Most decisions, I shouldn't say most, but many decisions are made emotionally.
Mm-hmm. In fact, all decisions are made emotionally. And there's a great book, How We Decide. The science is pretty clear. There's an emotional component to every decision-making, a decision that we make in our lifetimes. We like to fool ourselves and think that it's all logical. But the fact of the matter is there's an emotional component.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can hit the emotional component with the client and get them believing, because you want them to believe what you believe.
Yes.
And if you can get to that point, now you can get into the details of whatever technology you're selling or the functionality of whatever you're doing or what you can deliver. But if you're trying to deliver something that doesn't resonate with them emotionally, then you're not going to win that deal.
That's right. So we transition now to your business life. The diversity within that part of your life has been incredible. Not only the diversity of industries that you've worked in, but the size of the company, the stages of development for the company, the stages of the life cycles for the company, the leadership roles that you had within those companies. How did that school, if you will, or that experience prepare you for leading CEO roundtables?
Well, I think, again, it was a diverse background. Yeah. I can remember, I basically went into the construction business. I had to stop along the way, but I went into the construction business after having run a computer company. So white collar to blue collar.
Yeah,
immediately.
Different animals.
Totally different.
Yeah.
The way you dealt with people, the education level.
Yes.
I had 200 people that worked, dug holes, ran bulldozers,
Yes.
put irrigation systems in. But again, go back to my military days, dealing with this diverse team that I worked with. I said, I've got to relate. They have to relate to me, and I have to relate to them. So I made sure that I was in the field. I got in a ditch with them.
Yeah.
I got on a bulldozer. I wasn't a very good bulldozer operator, but I would get on a bulldozer.
It's a little dangerous.
And and show that, hey, I understand what your job is. I understand, and I want you to understand me.
Yes.
And I think that was it was a conscious thing that I did, because that was a transition. And then so I think I've been able to take those different situations that I've had, because within our CEO group, we have diverse. We have people in the construction business. We have people in retail. We have people in financial services, legal, accounting, a whole diverse people. But the key is that business is business. I don't care what business you're in, business is business.
The fundamentals are the fundamentals.
The fundamentals of business are there. And what we just been talking about in terms of that listening and that leadership and that trust building, it permeates the whole point of leadership in whatever business you're in.
Yeah.
So I think I probably have a little credibility with the CEO groups, because I've kind of done that.
Exactly.
And then I can relate to what they're going through. If you haven't had to make a payroll, you don't understand what it is to run a business sometimes.
Yeah, that's right.
So, right? I got to make a payroll on Friday, and I don't have the money in the bank on Wednesday. I better get it there by Friday.
And that's a real problem for entrepreneurs in stage 1 and stage 2, and even stage 3 companies.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I find that is probably a weak point across the board.
Yeah.
Is that proper financial planning.
Yes.
To avoid the crisis of cash flow challenges.
Well, I tell businesses I work with, I said, look, my goal for you is for you to have at least 1 year's worth of operating expenses available that you don't have to touch, and you will never have to touch, because you will oscillate whether you like it or not. Unfortunately, many of them don't have that available, because they started it without enough thought, without enough planning, without enough preparation, without enough funding, or they've used up a lot of it too early on in the game. So crucial role of paying attention to the finances for the business.
The other part of it, again, I experienced this in the construction business when it went downhill. Somebody told me once that success breeds overhead. And what I found was,
I like that.
Once you're doing a great job, you have a tendency then to expand, get fancier equipment, hire more people, get in fancier facilities.
Yes.
And then when it gets tough, you got to drag that overhead with you.
Well, I have a client who actually experienced that, and he said to me, and I remember like it was yesterday, but it was literally about 17 years ago. He said, T, you don't feed a whale guppy food. When you get to a certain size, the crumbs are not going to do it anymore. And so the appetite and the demands on the business just grow exponentially. And so, yes, that's one of the controls you certainly have to pay attention to.
Yeah, and you just can't when times are good, make sure you keep the dry powder, as you said.
That's exactly.
Because tough times are always going to come.
Like it or not, winter's going to come.
Like it or not, they're going to happen.
That's right.
And so you have to plan accordingly. And I think a lot of people fail to do that.
Yeah. So when I look at all of these experiences that you've had, and I look at your education, your experiences, your relationships, your indoctrinations, the skills that you've developed over the years, the knowledge that you've acquired over the years, the abilities that you've developed over the years, all of these things put you in a unique position to actually not only see what these stage 2 companies, the entrepreneurs, the owners are experiencing, see where they're headed, but to help them chart a course from where they are to where they're going to, and to help them collaborate with each other so they can help each other in that journey. Tell us a little bit about what your thinking is when you're actually leading a group and helping them move from where they are to where they want to be.
Well, I try to focus on some of the basic things. I think in the entrepreneur world, you have a tendency to hit a ceiling. And there's a book out, it's called No Man's Land.
Yeah, No Man's Land.
They get into that area where they just don't have the skill set. They're good at their trade, at their skill, but they're not good at the functionality of business. What are the functionality in business? Well, not necessarily in priority of order, but certainly top priority is people.
Yes.
You got to understand how to hire people and how to put them in the right seat. Number 2 is the financial management, the operational aspect of things, that you have processes in place. If you're going to duplicate and grow your business, you got to have everybody understanding the process of how we do stuff. And your ability to execute and make decisions with proper planning, with support like folks like yourself and others, that they can have a plan in place. But if they don't execute on that plan, it just sits on the shelf as dust. So across the board, that's where I find the weak points, and I think is what we try to talk about as a group, because somebody may have an issue where somebody else has already had that issue and addressed it. And they did this, and it either didn't work or it did work. But it's the ability to share knowledge so that you don't have to learn it all yourself. And that's what I hear. Oftentimes people say, I should have done this sooner, because I wouldn't have done that wrong, or I wouldn't have made that mistake, or I would have done this sooner. Because again, the old saying, you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
And the opportunity of collaborating with other people kind of bridges that, because you now know what they know, even though you didn't know it, and it accelerates your capacity of understanding and learning.
Well, Keith Cunningham, who is the Rich Dad and the Rich Dad Poor Dad book by Robert Kiyosaki, writes a book. The book is called The Road Less Stupid, and the first chapter in the book is called The Dumb Tax. And I think the CEO roundtable groups that you lead really help these stage 2 entrepreneurs avoid dumb taxes. He has this famous line in the book. He says, if you were to undo 5 major decisions in your life, how much money would you have?
Right.
And the CEO roundtable group really gives entrepreneurs an opportunity to have their ideas and have their decision-making challenged and improved so that they can avoid those dumb taxes.
There's another saying I heard. It says that experience is the best college, but the tuition's awful high.
Very expensive. Very expensive. And not just financial costs. There's time cost, there's emotional cost, there's relationship cost a lot of times when you're dealing with experience. But the opportunity cost. These opportunities for CEOs to talk to each other really helps them identify opportunities, doesn't it? And help them take advantage of those opportunities, sometimes collaborate.
I'll give you an example. I won't say who it is because the gentleman is still in Orlando, still in our groups and very successful. But when I mentioned to you how this group started back with UCF early on and kind of an accelerator off of the incubator program they had, and a fellow that I work with here in CEO Nexus was facilitating this first group, if you will. And the people that came into the room didn't know each other. It was their first meeting. All their companies were just now in the growth phase. And this one individual came into the meeting and said, I'm here because I committed to be here. But this is my last meeting because I'm selling the company. But I committed to be here, so I'm here. So, they were all kind of just getting to know each other. And so the facilitator said, well, that's an interesting issue because what we try to do here is to focus on issues. So although you've made this decision, why don't you tell us about that process that you went through? And so they did. So we have a certain way we talk about issues. And so at the end of the meeting, and of every issue, the question is always asked, okay, what are you going to do, right? When are you going to do it? What are you going to do about it? You've reached some good input. This individual said, you know what? This is going to be tough because I got to go home and tell my wife I'm not selling the company. So not every decision in a CEO group is that dramatic.
That's right.
But there's a situation where a fella was headed in a particular course, changed course, and he's highly successful now in his industry.
And not only that, but you changed his life.
Yeah, totally.
Changed his wife's life, changed his kids' lives. Completely changed the trajectory of his family, and in a positive way. Really powerful stuff. So, one of the things that I think entrepreneurs tend to not focus on are their major 7 life cycles. Either they're focusing on their business life cycle so much that they ignore their physical health, their mental health, emotional health, or spiritual health, or their relationship suffers. Or their family suffers because there's not enough time and energy and focus spent with their family members, or they don't take enough time to sharpen the saw, so they don't grow professionally as well as they need to grow, as rapidly as they need to grow, or their job suffers, and they may be doing too many jobs, and they're doing all the jobs below average, as opposed to 1 or 2 of those jobs above average or the best. And as a result, their financial life cycle is usually stunted as well. Do you see any developmental challenges in the entrepreneurs in the groups that you have? And do you see them actually making progress in all of those 7 major life cycles?
Well, I wouldn't say all 7.
Yeah.
But obviously, your business life is it's not the most important, but it certainly consumes more of your time than any other hours in the day.
Yes.
I can tell when a CEO is under stress, whether it's financial stress or, people stress, whatever it may be, that absolutely has an effect on his family. They take that home. I mean, if you're under stress, start with your mind isn't thinking properly.
Yes.
You're not thinking through rationally. You're knee-jerking your decisions. Back to our cash flow conversation, yes. Often knee-jerk decisions are made based on cash flow. Mm-hmm. So I think, and people are not aware, and that's why I like the way you structure that, is that I don't think most people are aware of looking at their life through the lens of those various aspects. Mm-hmm. They're in it, but they don't consciously think about it.
It's an unconscious movement throughout their life, throughout their day. Yes.
And if you don't think about it, you can't address it.
That's right.
And the only way you can address it is to have open and transparent communication with whatever parties you're dealing with.
Right.
Certainly your family, your teenage kids,
mm-hmm.
your wife, your and then obviously people in your business circle. So I think one of the most important, certainly an important aspect, is to be able to learn and understand those aspects and how they have to work together, mm-hmm. because they all interact.
Whether you like it or not.
Absolutely. And if you're constantly under stress, number one, your employees are going to be under stress. Mm-hmm. They're going to wonder, do I have a job tomorrow?
People think that their employees don't know
You walk in and
Oh, they know.
they know immediately.
Yes.
You walk in, if you just had a fight at home with a wife over something and you come in with a long face, they'll know it right away.
And it changes the entire setting of the organization, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I say, look, if you're under stress, if you got a problem, if you just had a argument or whatever it was, you got some bad news, before you walk in the office, before you get out your car, give yourself a pep talk.
That's right. That transition management is so important. I literally had that conversation with some workers. Was it this week, Gilbert? Was it this week? I had the conversation with some workers, and I said, look, there is your home life, there's your social life, and then there's your work life. If you're having a problem transitioning from home to work or from social to work, take 10 minutes before you get to work and make that mental and emotional transition, and then get here. But exactly what you're saying is so crucial. The self-talk is important as well, but that transition management really makes a big difference. And if an entrepreneur does not consciously raise his or her self-awareness so that they're aware when this is happening, when they're oscillating down or up in their mood, and consciously switch their thinking from home to work and be able to compartmentalize that, then in my experience, they carry it right into the next task. And of course, they don't perform as well as they can. How do CEOs in your group take that type of input when the input is not necessarily what they're expecting?
Well, it kind of varies on the individual.
True.
But I think for the most part, they appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because it's an awakening of something that they're weak in or they're not aware of. I mean, your point of self-awareness, many times we do think we're not even aware of what we're doing. We don't know how we're affecting other people.
Yes.
Because we have a tendency to look at life through our own lens. Mm-hmm. We don't appreciate other thinking, how other people behave. I mean, the way you think through things and the way I think through things may be different. We may be coming to the same conclusion, but the way we're doing that may not sync unless we understand each other and we're building on the strengths of each other. What's it come down to? Open, transparent communication. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest weakness I see across the board in CEOs, really in anybody, is that they're not communicating effectively. Like Covey says. And if you kind of constantly, so in the groups, if you constantly kind of bring that up, because usually the solution to every problem that comes up, when you ask somebody, what are you going to go do? They got to better communicate. They got to sit down with somebody. They got to get on the same page. And so many entrepreneurs don't do that because they don't know how to do it, or they're so sucked into the daily activities. They're so in the business.
That's right.
That they don't have an opportunity to step back and say, hey, let me evaluate this. Coming together with other people gives you that break. Now, some people adapt well to a peer environment, but some people don't. If you got a big ego, you don't think anybody can tell you anything,
it's going to be tough.
It doesn't work.
It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Someone's going to get hurt.
Yeah, and you're not going to take the input, and so it's...
Well, as I work with entrepreneurs, like you work with entrepreneurs, but in a different way, I see some of the stresses that they're dealing with, and I hear it almost on a daily basis. And what I've come to realize is that a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize how many tools they have available to them, tools that they've acquired throughout their lifetimes, from mom, from dad, from teachers, from friends, from experiences that they've had, from jobs that they've had. And so when they're dealing with issues, whether that issue is a problem, an obstacle, a roadblock, or even an opportunity, they don't sit back and think, okay, let me analyze this issue carefully. What exactly is the issue? Sometimes they don't even know what the issue is. Let me have a discussion about that issue. Let me weigh the pros and the cons of this issue in order to make the executive decision necessary before you actually design the job that's required to execute on the implementation of whatever it is that you decide to do. And so as they go through this process, it's something that we probably take for granted because we've been involved with businesses for a long time. We've helped businesses for a long time. But these entrepreneurs, on the other hand, they're usually people who have a great idea, or they have experience and they're tired of working for someone else and they want to do it for themselves, or they're just jumping into an entrepreneurship relationship because they're taking over a family business or something like that. So how does the CEO Roundtable help them make that transition from where they were to where they need to be, so that they can start addressing those issues a little bit more thoughtfully? If you will, how does that help them slow down so that they can be more thoughtful about those decisions, which hopefully will accelerate their business's growth and development?
Well, I think there's a number of things. Again, we get back to awareness. Yeah. And so what we try to accomplish in the CEO groups is, in addition to working on these issues that come up, and we have a very strict format we try to follow, that really smokes out what an issue is we also like to bring some best practices and some tools that they can utilize. Some of the things that you talk about, we try to bring some other speakers in that talk about certain things. Certainly emphasize certain books that should be read, as you just alluded to, so that the awareness level is brought up. Again, back to that, I don't know what I don't know.
Yes.
And I think if a CEO discusses an issue and they go back and execute on that issue, come back to the group and say, hey, I really appreciate the input. I went ahead and did this and it helped. Then it starts saying, wow, it does work. It is. I'm opening up my eyes and ears to get input, to hear others, and to take what others tell me and mix that with what I am doing and with my leadership team, and start asking questions as well to come to that final decision. I'm a big believer in collaboration, but again, you can't lead on collaboration or by consensus. At the end of the day, you still have to make the decision.
You've got to make the decision.
Right. Back to what we talked about earlier. But I think within the group, when a group first gets together, they're kind of feeling each other out. But I've got some groups that have been together for years, and they're almost complete a sentence, others. And so you really get
a lot of synergy.
A lot of deep issues, and they follow the lead. I shouldn't say follow the lead. They take the input properly.
Because they understand the intent.
They understand the intent was to help.
Yes.
And again, like I said earlier, some people work well in that environment. Some people don't work well in it. But if they work well in the environment, they're in it to learn and understand and build their skill set in how they're going to go back to their organization and lead more effectively, and take those same principles that they're learning in the CEO group and apply it to their leadership group, whether they've got just a partner or whether they've got 3 or 4 people in their leadership team. They can use those same principles. One of the things hopefully they learn in the meeting is that we run an effective meeting.
Yes.
In other words, we come away saying we got some stuff done. I've seen so often in businesses, they have meetings and they're horrible. They accomplish nothing. So have an effective meeting, have fewer of them, more effective, and make sure everybody understands what their responsibilities and roles are and what they're going to do to get the issue addressed or an opportunity considered and executed if that's the way they want to go. But they do it based on facts and data and that where that whole emotional thing and spiritual thing and social thing all kind of comes together in that decision-making process. But they have to be aware. Yeah. They have to understand that. And we're not just born to understand it. No. It's got to be taught.
The thoughtfulness is really where it's at. And how do we get entrepreneurs in this stage, or even any stage of the business development, whether it's a startup or even enterprise level, how do you get them to be more thoughtful? Because the decisions they make have significant impact, not only on them and the business, but every single stakeholder that the business has. and not just financially. It impacts their time, it impacts their resources, their emotions, their mindset, their relationships in profound ways. But if you're, like you indicated, if you are into the weeds, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, you've just got to focus on letting them spend a little bit of time out of the weeds.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, life gets in the way.
Yes.
You walk into the office, you have the best plans for the day, and all of a sudden you got customer problems, you got this, and it throws you off your mark. But you've got to just definitely plan that I'm going to spend X amount of time doing the stuff that's on the business.
Yes.
And you got to be disciplined. You got to be focused and disciplined. Some people can't do it and some people can. But I think there's some peer accountability, if we go back to the group, is that, I mean, let's face it, we all want to be accepted, right? Yeah. We all want to be viewed as being competent and able to execute on our duties. And, I'll give you an example. I had a group in Palm Beach when this Grow of Health thing first started. And I had a great member, and he'd come to every meeting, and he would bring up an issue, and the issue was basically just good management, good decision making, right people, right seat, that kind of thing. But the next meeting, he never did anything on it, and
no accountability.
Yeah, and he admitted that if he would follow some of the steps that were recommended, he could double the size of his business.
Yes.
I mean, he agreed to it, but he would never execute on it. And finally, the group kind of voted him off the island. They said,
so that's the ultimate accountability right there.
They said, well, why are you continuing to do that? I mean, we're telling you, you agree with our advice, our recommendations, but you're not doing it. You can't execute.
So either wasting your time or their time or both.
Yeah, in that case, it was both.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't happen often, but there's certainly, what I see most often is people start becoming more aware, and they appreciate that input. And it just opens up their mind. Their brain is bigger now because they're getting the effectiveness of other people's brains. But again, they still have to take control.
That's right.
And go execute on the things they have to execute on. And it goes and make sure they have the right team and all that stuff that's basic. But it's.
I want to transition a little, Ray. You're 79 years old now.
Right. Unfortunately, I guess you can look at it one way or the other.
So I got to tell you, I know a lot of men who are professionals who are working in a business in one form or the other. You're in better shape than about 80% of them that I know, and you're 79 years old. Your physical energy is high. Your emotional energy is high. Your mental energy is high. How do you manage those things?
Well, I came to the conclusion that if you let your mind go, the rest of you goes along with it.
Yes.
So, and I've seen so many people in my peer group, my age group, friends, college friends, military buddies, all this kind of stuff. And I saw that where they kind of quote unquote retired at some point. Yeah. Many of them aren't with us anymore because they just start to degenerate because there's no reason to get up in the morning. Mm-hmm. So I think I made a conscious decision. I mean, I'm not out there, hammering nails or spreading asphalt. I mean, I'm doing a job that I can do, in a good environment.
But you still watch your diet. You still exercise.
Oh, yeah. I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. I try to keep the weight off and eat right. You do those things you're supposed to do. I think I've always had the ability to not get stressed, is to try to look at things on an even keel. Mm-hmm. My wife gets stressed on everything, so I always tell her, wait a minute, she's worried about what the grandkids are going to do. I said, well, the grandkids haven't done it yet. Let's deal with making sure they're good human beings they won't do it, but let's deal with it when it occurs, not worry about if it occurs.
That's
right? So I've tried to lead my life that way, and I think once you stop being effective in terms of giving, and that's what I feel I can do now. If I'm, with 50 people that I deal with, I think I probably help some of them. I have an impact on
I know
some
you
of
help
them.
many of them.
And so I feel good about that. Again, I'm not working 40 hours a week. I'm not so it's work that I can do at my own pace, but I enjoy it, and I'm going to continue to do it as long as I can.
Yeah. So let me ask you, if you were to tell our audience maybe the 5 best reasons to join a CEO roundtable group, what would those 5 reasons be?
Well, number 1 is it's lonely at the top. That you're a place that you can share ideas. Number 2, in addition to sharing ideas, you get woken up to other business ideas and thoughts. Number 3, you build relationships that are different than your normal business relationships. I'm not suggesting you become buddies, but you become much closer business associates in a business. You're going to learn a lot new skills. You're going to be exposed to. Recently we've talked about is this phenomenon. I shouldn't say a phenomenon, but it's really rolling, this artificial intelligence.
Yes.
In all the groups where I brought it up, we've got a couple people that are learning it on time, and some of them that haven't even they heard of it, but it advances your knowledge as an individual and to be on top of what things are doing. And I think the last thing is I bring better accountability to what you're doing, because you become a better leader.
Yes.
And thus you're able to be more accountable to execute as a leader with your organization. Companies will grow based on the pace of the leader. And if you're a poor leader and you don't know it, then in this case, I think you get more awareness as to how you're functioning as a leader, and then you can execute on those things you need to execute on within your organization and grow the organization. So I think those are the primary things. There's a whole other list I could come up with, but as far as the top ones, I think those are the ones.
Well, I'm going to just tell everyone who's listening to this podcast that if they own a business, if they are an executive in a business that's a tier 2 company that's over $1 million in revenue, over 10 employees, they should seriously consider joining a CEO roundtable. And if they want to learn more about it, Ray, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, they can obviously call me, 407-908-9920. They can go to the CEO Nexus website. There's contact information on there, ceonexus.com, or they could reach me via text at that number I gave you. We all, for a plug, we do periodically do introductory sessions. We're going to be doing one here in this facility on the Thursday, September 7th. And if you fall into that category, just drop me a text and I'll make sure you'll have a link in which to register if you'd like to come and learn more about us.
We'll make sure to put your number up there so that they will have that information available to contact you. Ray, we can talk forever. I think we have a lot of similarities, a lot of same interests. We belong to many of the same tribes. But I know that your time is valuable. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit with us today.
Real pleasure.
Look forward to maybe having you on again sometime to share some of your other wisdoms with the Private Corporate Counsel and its members. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the association.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up another session of the Private Corporate Counsel podcast. We look forward to seeing you guys again when we meet again. I think the next time we will be talking to Clay Patterson, who runs a marketing business and also a private law firm in Orlando, Florida. I look forward to seeing you guys then.
Please continue to listen to our podcast to learn more. Contact us at 877-647-7887 or email us at info@pcc.law to learn more about the Private Corporate Counsel program and how we can help you and your business on your journey to success.